Press Play Podcast Network.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by to the latest Cavs on the Break NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. It is a doomy, gloomy, rainy, awful day here in Cleveland, and I'm not just talking about the weather. Of course, I'm talking about what just happened over the weekend in the Garden. We didn't do a Game 3 post-game pod. We combined them both in this glorious podcast for your listening pleasure. Hi, everyone. John Sabol with you alongside senior NBA writer for hoopswire.com. You can follow him at Amico Hoops. Sam Amico, how are you doing this morning?
I'm having a hard time getting going, John, because it is gloomy out. It's kind of cold. We had just finally gotten some hot weather, and now all of a sudden it's back to pretending to be April in Northeast Ohio. But other than that, I'm fine. Thanks
you bring
asking.
up a great point about the weather. It was 80 degrees and no rain for 5 or 6 days last week. And then the Cavaliers went ice cold.
Oh, wow. Yes,
Too soon?
they did. Yeah. They couldn't shoot straight, being out-muscled around the basket, which is really disappointing to see because they kind of where the strength of their defense was all year was, playing physical near the basket, blocking shots, and just have not done that in this series. Really, any game, even the game they won, they were kind of out-muscled. But it's been a disappointing series thus far, and they're going to have to completely do an about-face to be able to win 3 straight. And I don't know that either of us think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so. Let's set the table here real quick before we kind of break down this game, because I know everyone's trying to die in to figure out what went wrong, even though everyone that had eyes or ears that watched or listened to that game, both games over the weekend, know what happened. So we won't, belabor the issues much here. Sam and I here are going to go through what happened, but also look ahead to Game 5. Chase Smith and JIA are sitting this one out, so you're stuck with us too, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Or I don't know what else it would be, except we're going to talk a lot about bad basketball with the Cavs. So we didn't do a post Game 3 pod. Let's just leave it like this real quick. Cavs got blown out, and they were the first team in NBA during the season, Sam, that didn't score 80 points in a game, which is just unheard of. The only point you and I want to talk about with that before we get into Game 4 and then looking forward to Game 5 is, how shocked were you, not just by that performance in Game 3, but by that stat that no other team in the NBA had been held with under 80 points in a game? And that was the first time the Cavs had scored under 80.
Yeah, I was stunned. You didn't see that coming with this team, especially after Game 2. Mm-hmm. They scored with relative ease and had things going. And it was, I think, April of last year, so a year ago, the Trailblazers and Nuggets was the last time somebody scored less than 80 points. A team scored less than 80 points. So, it's been a year. I did not foresee the Cavs with all their offensive weapons being the team that would do that in the playoffs. And other than that, there's really not much to say about that game other than they just laid a complete egg and just seemed to shrink in the moment at Madison Square Garden, where players can make a name for themselves. Cavs kind of went the other way in that game, and the Knicks had a lot to do with it.
They did. And, the Cavs talked after the Game 3 that they were too hyped. They didn't want to bring so much into the pressure of the Garden, but the pressure of the Garden was obvious, and it affected them. All right, Game 4 yesterday, as we record this here on Monday, April 24th, the morning after. I call it the garbage at the Garden. That's how I kind of labeled it as, because that's what it was for the wine and gold. I hate to be that blunt, but, come on. This is getting to a point now where you're having guys that have performed at the highest level during the regular season that can shoot and score, and they're not doing it now in the playoffs at a consistent clip. As a fan, As fans and members of the media who cover this team like we do, it is so annoying and so frustrating. If you're a coach, if you're a player, if you're a front office executive, if you're a staffer, I can't even imagine how you feel. You probably, hopefully, feel way worse than we do. Donovan Mitchell had one of his worst games of his entire career, one of his worst playoff games, his worst game of a Cavalier, 11 points, 2 points in the second half. I mean, everyone knows his shooting from that game. What, 5 of 18 from the field? He only attempted 4 threes, Sam, when he averages about 9 or 10 a game. It just, the first 2 quarters of that game yesterday in game 4 resembled game 3. And then, of course, the second half, they made adjustments, all thanks to Darius Garland, but again, wasn't enough.
Yeah, the Knicks have done a fabulous job, unfortunately. After that game 1, where Donovan Mitchell had a huge game, even though the Knicks won, Tom Thibodeau, I went to his press conference, Knicks coach Tom Thibodeau, and sat there and listened to him say, yes, we got tonight's game, but we have to make adjustments on Mitchell. We cannot let that happen again, or it's going to be a long series. And they kind of just brushed it off as coach speak, or at least I did. But here he did. He made those adjustments. And guess what? They are blitzing Donovan Mitchell. They are keeping the ball out of his hands. If you remember, John, the game 2, everybody was excited because, hey, Donovan Mitchell has a career high 13 assists. Well, that was by design. The Knicks want him to pass the ball. Well, in game 2, the other Cavs, particularly Darius Garland, really delivered when Mitchell gave up the ball. But right now, the other guys aren't delivering. The Knicks are forcing the ball out of Donovan Mitchell's hands and saying, let's see if these other guys, this inexperienced group, can beat us. And they haven't delivered. Donovan Mitchell, yeah, he was struggling shooting the ball because he can't get an open look because they're running 3 guys at him because nobody else is doing anything offensively to be a threat. Now, in defense, Darius Garland had a great third quarter, Sunday. And, that helped, but not enough other guys. I've liked what I've seen from Karis LeVert. He stayed aggressive the whole time, but you're just not getting anybody else contributing offensively consistently. And defensively, forget it. I mean, I didn't see this coming into the series that they would get so out-muscled. I knew that the Knicks were big with Hartenstein and especially Mitchell Robinson, but those 2 guys have completely outplayed Allen and Mobley, and I never saw that coming because Allen and Mobley had really good regular seasons.
Man, there's just so much to break down from that game, Sam. I mean, everything that went wrong went wrong. If you tweeted this and we both said this in the group chat, if Donovan Mitchell had a B- game, a C+ game, Cavs win this game by probably 10 points. I mean, a historic collapse of play by him. Darius Garland had the Darius Garland game that we call it in game 2 at home that you and I witnessed in person, and then struggled in game 3. I'm just shocked that they cannot get that consistent scoring. And we alluded to this in the series preview podcast in a story I did for Fox 8 when I talked with Craig Elo about this series. The biggest change or X factor outside of players or circumstance is the coaching. And we touched on it on the pod and in my preview story with Craig Elo, but I think we glossed over it a little too much, even though looking back on it, it probably was the biggest point that we all missed. And that was, we all know Thibodeau is a defensive-minded genius and has experience more so than JB Bickerstaff. And this isn't a, poop on JB Bickerstaff situation here. This is not, I'm not making fun. I'm not ripping him at all. This is a Tom Thibodeau praise. Okay. This guy has experience and he has outcoached JB because of experience, not because of JB's errors or omissions. And he has, like you said, taken Donovan Mitchell completely out of the game with the double teams. That's affected him. Mitchell's admitted that. But he has these players around him, these bigs you talk about, that we've all wouldn't think would even do anything. Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, you name it. I mean, and then you're getting role players that are buying into his system and performing when other guys aren't. A Josh Hart of the world or Quigley, whatever. And it goes just to say how much Thibs is I think one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to situations like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember during the LeBron era, when Thibodeau was a coach of the Bulls, they would give the Cavs fits because even though they were overmatched in terms of talent. But I had one family member get mad at me, not like actually mad, but was in disbelief 3 weeks ago when he said, "Oh, I hope we play the Knicks in the first round." And I said, that's not going to be so easy. And he, really? And I said, no, the Cavs are better than the Knicks in the regular season, but they're not that much better. And you have to look at the experience factor. And I said at the time, I said, I feel Jalen Brunson has been a better player this year and had a better season than Darius Garland. What matchup do the Cavs win in that series when you look at individual matchups? Well, theoretically, they win Donovan Mitchell against whoever. But the rest, I mean, it's either even or the Knicks have the advantage. So I think that there was a lot and the Knicks had the advantage in bench, as well as a big advantage in bench, as well as coaching experience in the playoffs. Tom Thibodeau's just older than JB Bickerstaff. He's been in a lot of different situations, more situations. So, people will get mad at me when I would say the Knicks are not going to be any sort of cakewalk. Far from it, especially when you consider how many playoff rookies the Cavs have. And their playoff rookies like Garland and Mobley are playing, and, really Isaac Okoro are playing like playoff rookies.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do other than hope that they get the experience this year, learn from it, and come back stronger next season? They've got to, I don't want to get too far ahead, but they've got to obviously transactional phase this summer. They've got to improve the bench.
And that's a podcast for a different day. We could address off-season stuff later, but let's still go into this series, and we'll talk about what we expect in Game 5. A couple points I want to make here, and that's the being out-rebounded factor again. All three of the games the Cavs have lost, they've been out-rebounded by quite a large margin. They got out-rebounded in Game 4 yesterday, 30-26? Doesn't sound like a lot, but your offensive glass, 17-7. Again, I mean, Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley have got to do a better job. Now, Jarrett Allen did acknowledge that, and so has Evan Mobley, that they both need to, be better. Great. Then do it. Let's do it. I mean, New York is throwing fits at them. They're too muscling up. They're too active. Too many times the Cavs weren't even near the rim on a shot attempt. And I know in the second half, JB had kind of staggered Mobley and Allen not playing on the same time, and it seemed to help a little bit, mainly because Evan Mobley got in foul trouble, which really hurt their chances and really hurt their flow. But they've got to be better on the glass. I don't know how you can change that quick. JB said, we can, in the regular season, we've made these switches, and now we're not. We can't do that now in the playoffs. And he's right. They seem to do it in Game 2, but that's a little different now.
Yeah, everything changes in the playoffs. It is totally a different season. There are things that work during the regular season that won't work. What surprised me, John, is the fact that the Cavs were near the top defensively all year.
Yep.
And big part of being near the top defensively is not allowing second chance opportunities. They're not only getting out rebounded, they're getting beat to loose balls, those little things. And any long rebound goes to the Knicks. I don't know how that happens every time. And I think that's just having a better sense of better court sense the Knicks do at this time of year. They've been fantastic since they made that Josh Hart trade. He's been a huge part of everything that they've been doing to the Cavs in the playoffs. They're 20-9 since they made that Josh Hart trade. With one of those losses being Game 2 against the Cavs. So they've just been fantastic since they got a guy who is really a role player, but has been a huge X factor for them. And that's really cost the Cavs. I just didn't see them getting just destroyed on the boards like they have been, especially those second and third chance opportunities that they're giving the Knicks have just proven to be a killer and deflating. And the other thing too, John, they're not defending at the rim very well.
No, they're not.
Like, and that was their strength. When Mobley and Allen saw a guard coming to the basket, they would be able to either alter the shot or block the shot or just make the guard turn right back around. They have not done that at all this series. Not in any of the games.
And Sam, I know the players will say certain things to us media. I know we're not in New York, but after games and everything, but there's only so much that they're not going to tell you either. And the coaches won't tell you some things either. It's all stuff behind closed doors, and you don't want to admit a lot of different things to the media. Totally get it. But you got to wonder what they're saying. You got to wonder what they're admitting, like, wow, we just got punched in the face again. We need to really make adjustments and just, dig deep and, try to be better or get back to where our bread and butter was, down low. I mean, whatever you want to say it, they've got to have a come to Jesus moment, right? But it hasn't happened. But here's the thing. To me, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing because this is the inexperience factor. This is a young team. They haven't been here before. So that moment may happen, may have already happened, may happen in game 5 if they lose. It may happen in the offseason, and then you build on it. And that's the biggest thing, is trying to build on those errors and adversity that you're trying to overcome. It's just, you got to wonder if you're a Darius Garland or a Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, your core 4, something is not working that works so well in the regular season. And how do you adjust and make that change? And it's not necessarily on coaching. That's on individual players. That's on mental makeup. And right now, they do not have it.
Yeah, I think that a big part of what's going to benefit them is this experience. Is getting to the playoffs, being the favored seed, and realizing, this is a different game. This is a more physical game. And these are the tough lessons sometimes that young teams have to learn, that we can't just be who we were in the regular season. We've got to take it up. We've got to be more physical. To me, their inexperience is showing. People will say, well, the Knicks they don't have great playoff experience, but they've got real veterans who have been there. Jalen Brunson was a member of the Western Conference Finals last year, played in the Western Conference Finals last year with the Mavericks. Okay, was a key part of that team. Julius Randle's a veteran player. Julius Randle hasn't even played that well this series.
Man, we haven't even talked about that.
Yeah, he can't hit a shot. But he's doing the things like, if you watch him, he is just so determined to be physical with Evan Mobley, and it's working. There are times Mobley has fought back, but, not overall. He just doesn't have that experience. He hasn't played as many games as Julius Randle. Mitchell Robinson has benefited a lot, obviously a big guy, but has benefited a lot from the players around him. Josh Hart has been in numerous NBA battles, big games. Cats have been in big regular season games. This is the first time this group has been in big playoff games. And it's showing. And, these are the difficult lessons that young, inexperienced teams so often learn in the playoffs. We heard before the playoffs, John, I heard over and over and over again, and I don't say this to criticize the guy, because good for him, and everybody in Cleveland loves Donovan Mitchell. And what else was he supposed to say? But he would say repeatedly, we're not worried about being inexperienced. We know we're a talented team. We don't let people, that's all we ever hear is how inexperienced we are in the playoffs, and we're not going to let that impact us. Well, guess what? It's that inexperience, to me, has been the most obvious in the NBA playoffs of any team in the entire playoffs, Eastern Conference, Western Conference. The Cavs' inexperience in these situations is showing more than anybody else, any of the other 15 teams in the playoffs. And It's fans can get disheartened, but this is the reality of pro basketball. Is the majority of the time, the more veteran team with a more veteran coach is going to be the team to advance. And it's because they take away what you're good at. And guess what the Knicks have done? They've taken every single thing the Cavs are good at. They've taken it away, including Donovan Mitchell.
You're 100% right, Sam. In our preview pod of the series, we talked about the Thibodeau factor, right? Or Thibodeau factor of trying to take away the Cavs pick and roll. The Cavs don't have a set offense. Their set offense is the pick and roll and then hero ball. That's not going to do much in the playoffs. We all thought on paper, the Cavs are a better team than the Knicks, talent-wise. I still firmly believe that. But sometimes the talent doesn't win you the game. Sometimes it's the coaching, the intangibles, the experience, yada, yada, yada. But the thing that I never thought would have happened was you can take away that pick and roll, but the Cavs bigs are still going to step up. You can take away the pick and roll, but Donovan or Darius are going to get open, hit big shots. All three of those phases, those big three characteristics of this Cavaliers team and how they score just have not worked at all. And that's shocking to me as well. To play off your point, Donovan, one thing I got to say about him, and I love the guy, and he played awful. He owned it after the game in the post-game press conference, completely owned it, didn't shy away, and handled it with class. And you love to see that. And I think if there is a little, I don't even want to call it a silver lining, but there's one small little positive, it's that maybe some of the younger guys in the team hear that, see that, and can take note of how to be a pro. Not to say these other guys aren't, because they all face the music. Jared Allen threw himself under the bus. Evan Mobley and Darius Garland all said the right things, but they're seeing that, and maybe they somehow can turn that into a positive and build upon that as well going forward. Sam, before we go into Game 5, I want to actually play that Donovan Mitchell soundbite.
Probably the second or third worst game in my career. I didn't show up for my guys. Ultimately, everybody did their job. We had our faults as a group, but, ultimately I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Well, he's 100% right, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time there in the second quarter or second half. He had 2 points in the second half. Is that right?
Yeah, he had 9 points entering after halftime. He had 9 points at halftime, I should say.
9 points at halftime. Well, and those 2 points came really late when it had been decided in the second half. He started the second half 0 for 9 shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that things would be easier for Donovan Mitchell if and when the other guys step up a little bit more. Darius Garland stepped up in the third quarter. Mitchell still was part of that wasn't on the floor, or the Knicks were still saying, you know what, go ahead, Darius Garland beats us, so be it, which could have turned out to be a mistake. But the other guys have to get going more regularly and more consistently. Frankly, I've never seen Jared Allen this bad. I've never seen him this bad. He's totally been ineffective. And I know he had 14 points, but I've never seen him play this bad.
It's got to be the quietest 14 points you'll see in a playoff game, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of them, again, came when it was already decided, but it definitely was. It was quiet, 14 points. Mobley has gone back to looking like, he did kind of at the start of the year when everybody was kind of like, well, what's he? I think he'll be fine. He just needs playoff reps.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think they'll all be fine moving forward. This group will be fine. This core four will be fine. And I got to tell you, I've been the one guy who I've been consistently impressed with in the playoffs. At least he's been a guy who's been very aggressive and can be impactful, as Karis LeVert. He's at least attacking. He's getting after it. He's done a pretty decent job defensively, except for when they switched him on to RJ Barrett. He did an okay job on Jalen Brunson, but RJ. And you know what? We've said this all along, all season long. We say role players play better at home. Well, RJ Barrett's kind of a glorified role player. He was terrible in Cleveland. He's been playing great in New York. I suspect in game 5 in Cleveland, he'll go back to being bad or average at best.
Let's leave it right there when we talk about game 5 in Cleveland. And I want to react to your Karis LeVert point here in a moment. So let's take a break right here on Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. John Sabol alongside Sam Amico. We're going to preview game 5, touch on Karis LeVert, and much more. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? Chase Smith here, host of the Chase Smith Podcast, and my podcast reflects who I am. My hobbies, my interests, my passions, my curiosities, my careers, my questions, and my family. I'll spend time talking about all types of sports, movies, TV shows, trending news stories, and other cultural events, and even faith. This is who I am, and I hope I can get to know you as well. Join me on the Chase Smith Podcast, and let's have some thought-provoking conversations, only on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol, and we're hosts of the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Welcome back to Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. John Sabol alongside senior NBA writer and owner-operator, hoopswire.com. All of your NBA and Cavs needs, go ahead there and read Sam Amico there at hoopswire.com. Follow Sam at Amico Hoops on Twitter. Follow the pod at Cavs on the Break, and follow yours truly at John_Sabol. Before we get into Game 5, Sam, real quick, you mentioned Karis LeVert. And I completely agree with you about the LeVert point in this, that he's been a pleasant surprise. And I know Cavs fans have been very bullish on him since that trade last year. He has stepped up this past season, very streaky shooter. Anybody that is surprised by Karis LeVert's performance, clearly not watching Cavs basketball because he is such a streaky shooter. Now, that being said, a lot of people, a lot of Cavs fans, you see it in your Twitter mentions. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen it in my Twitter mentions, group chats that we have, and with other friends. People do not like that Karis LeVert was starting, and it's better for off the bench. Okay, here's my point to that, and you're going to agree with me. I know you are, because you're not putting Isaac Okoro in the starting lineup when he's a major liability. So who else are you going to put there? It's always been LeVert or Okoro throughout the season, flip-flopping. Okay, then the point is, well, then who do you have coming off the bench as your bench scorer? Well, that's the problem. The Cavs don't have a bench. And anybody that wants Danny Green out there, and we wanted to see Danny Green play in the series, and he has, but not very often. He is not the Danny Green of 2012. He was brought in here to be that playoff experience. He gets some playoff reps, and it has not been a good a matchup. It's been a matchup problem for him off the bench in this series. So the Cavs are in a tough spot, because who else are you going to have come off the bench and score if you put LeVert in there? It's not going to be Chetty, who's the worst streaky shooter on the team. Ricky Rubio has been a non-factor and has not been the same since coming back from that knee injury. So what else is JB Bickerstaff going to do? So I give him a ton of credit about putting LeVert in the lineup. You can call it a panic move, but that's really the only move.
Yeah, I agree. I think that look, this is the playoffs. You don't have a margin for error, and the bottom line is the Cavs bench has not been very good. It's been a major disappointment most of the season. Their best part of it was LeVert on a consistent basis. Sadly, Danny Green has not really helped. And you're right, Ricky Rubio is not the same player. And I mean, I'm not ripping the guy. It's hard to be the same player after 2 major knee surgeries. But neither of those guys, and I know JB Bickerstaff is trying to get them going, but they just don't have it. And at this point, you think it sounds crazy, and it may not lead to a win, but I personally would like to see JB. Hey, let's give Lamar Stevens a try, because at least with Stevens, he's a physical guy, he's an energy guy, and the Cavs were lacking both severely. So, even in the second half when the games were out of reach, I thought, let's see Lamar Stevens at least get him some playoff reps, because Danny Green's not going to be back next season, I don't think. Ricky Rubio, I think, probably will, but, you can't have him playing anything more than a 12th man at this stage of his career. And I just think, obviously, the Cavs are going to have to shore up their bench. So why not play the guys who haven't gotten an opportunity, whether it's Lamar Stevens, Raul Neto, see what they can do. Maybe Neto could be a new Dellavedova or something. But I only say that because the guys who they're playing now are not getting the job done. So why not try something else? And as far as LeVert starting, to your point, John, yeah, you've got to start. You've got to. Isaac Okoro he's had a couple nice moments. I'll give him credit in the playoffs, but he's not a starting small forward at this, on a team that has aspirations to do more than just have a really good regular season. He's just not. He's in year 3. You've got to move on from him as your starter. Maybe he could be your 7th, 8th, 9th man, whatever, and play that role well. That's fine. But you can't keep forcing guys into the lineup. And I feel like the Cavs have really tried to force it with Okoro, when LeVert, to me, is clearly the better player for them right now. So I don't have a problem with them starting LeVert. No, you've got to do it. You start your best 5, and guess what? This is the playoff. If guys got to play 40, 45 minutes, then so be it.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like, and we've talked about this a lot, about how the Cavs have forced Okoro a lot, and I got to give JB some credit, though. He's made the adjustments in putting LeVert in there and limited Okoro's minutes just because of the liability. And you know what? If you're the Knicks, if he's on the floor, you leave him open to hit those, or to attempt those corner threes, because 8 out of 10 times he's going to miss them, unfortunately. And I wish it was better, but I think you also credit that to him in the moment. Maybe just not being there in terms of maybe nerves, but I tend to think that's just not who he is, and the Cavs want him to be that way, and that's not who he is. That's not how he has been. So I don't know if that experiment has failed yet. Maybe still premature, but again, podcast for a different day. All right, Game 5, Wednesday night, Cleveland, 7:00. You and I both will be there. What do you think happens? What do you think the Cavs need to do to kind of limit and stop the bleeding?
They have to be more physical. Start there, okay? Start there. Stop getting worked on the boards. And then, if you do that, you kind of shell shock the Knicks like they did in Game 2. In order for them to win, that's really where it's going to start. It's going to start up front, and everybody's, Donovan Mitchell needs to get going, and that's true. If they were to win 3 straight in this series, come back and win 3 straight to win the series, it would be because Donovan Mitchell has gotten going again, and the Cavs have figured out how to keep the Knicks from blitzing him. Well, we know the answer to that. The way they do that is by the other guys to step up their games offensively. But I just think if you really want to start somewhere, you've got to change the way Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are playing down low. And that means defensively, try to do what you've been doing all regular season. Protect the basket, go get rebounds, put a body on somebody. And you've got to match the Knicks in terms of physicality, right now, John, I don't think they'll win Game 5. I think the season will be over Wednesday. And that's just based on what I've seen from them. They've only beaten the Knicks once. They lost to them once already at home. And I'm just not seeing any. At this point, you don't have any confidence in Jared Allen or Evan Mobley or really anybody else other than maybe Mitchell and Garland can get going once in a while, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
That's really your only hope that I see right now, because the rest of the guys just have not shown that you have any reason to believe in them at this point.
Well, I said the Cavs in 6, clearly not going to happen. I thought they'd split the series in New York. That didn't happen. So I guess I'm going to agree with you again. I don't see them winning game 5, but that means if that doesn't happen, that means they win. So I guess I'm using that reverse psychology, which means I'll be 0 for 3,
Happy
right?
to be wrong.
Happy
to be wrong.
I just don't see them. They play obviously way better at home. One of the best defensive teams in the league, if not the best, clearly not showing it in this series. They've struggled at home. Even if you win game 5, they're not winning game 6 in New York. So I wish I was wrong on that one too. I just think there's so many problems that they have that they can't just fix them in 2 days. Too many things are compounded. Confidence, we've talked, this theme of this podcast episode has been experience and confidence, right? Cavs don't have that outside of Donovan Mitchell, really. And that hasn't been a factor either. I don't know how you're going to be able to say in your mind that they're going to be able to right the ship and win game 5 and then win game 6 in New York and then force a game 7 back at home. Well, guess what? Any Cavs fan that says, oh, we've been down 3-1 before 2016, that is garbage. LeBron James ain't walking through that door.
Yeah.
Completely different. Stop that nonsense. Love your passion, fans. Love it. It's not going to happen. So take that point. If that makes you feel better, fine. But take that point and throw it away, because in reality, the chips are stacked way against this team, and you don't have that one guy that can perform and flip a switch. Which brings me to another point, Sam. How much have we, as fans of this team and media members of this team that cover this team and people that from Northeast Ohio, have we taken LeBron for granted for his career, but also flipping that switch and performing at Madison Square Garden? We've taken that for granted in all these years.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is that, you get to a point where you're used to seeing the Cavs, because of LeBron James, have great success in the playoffs. So it's just expected when you have the higher seed that you're that the Cavs will win with that higher seed. But John, you and I, especially myself, are old enough to remember the Cavs series before LeBron James, playoff series before LeBron James, when it was Sean Kemp and the rest of the guys.
Yep.
And the Cavs, very similar to that today. They seem to be Donovan Mitchell and the rest of the guys. And that's not a shot at the rest of the guys. Donovan Mitchell's just a level above everybody else on the team. And Darius Garland's fabulous player. I don't think that, we should hold this series against him, because again, it's his first series as an NBA player, first playoff series. And it's just showing up. I mean, everybody gets mad about it, that, Jared Allen has been bad, or Evan Mobley, he doesn't look like anything more than a weaker DeAndre Jordan, I think I read. Darius Garland has been up and down. Isaac Okoro isn't getting. Yeah, well, these guys are all new to this. And we said this going into the playoffs. Nobody wanted to believe us. No, because they're so used to seeing, the LeBron James era. Well, guess what? LeBron's teams were all veteran teams. This team is not a veteran team. This team has a good veteran in Donovan Mitchell with playoff experience, and nobody else in terms of that type of experience. So it's not a huge surprise. It's not a reason to be disgusted. It's something to build on. They had a fantastic regular season, very good regular season, and they're gonna, they'll emerge better next season with this playoff experience. So, as far as again, John, I don't want to get too far ahead, but game 5, you're right. I think that there's so many problems that there's no way that you fix them in game 2. Maybe they have a good game, and maybe the Knicks self-implode. That's really their best hope at this point. But they're not going to win this series. They're not coming back from 3-1. And It was. I remember when Larry Bird once was down 3-1 in a series, and his first comments after the game were, "Well, I know when we're up 3-1, I say it's over." So, that's where I stand with this. It's over. It's just a formality of whether the Knicks win Game 5 or Game 6, and look, that's the reality of the situation. They're not going to be able to fix what they have to fix in time to save the series. They just won't, and they're not experienced enough to be able to do that.
And with that said, we just hope if they lose, they go down fighting and it's a competitive game and not a blowout.
Yeah, you always want to see them go up into the offseason with some momentum for sure, and to say, you know what, at least we fought that last game or those last couple of games.
If the Cavs somehow win Game 5, which we hope they do, Sam and I are predicting they won't, Game 6 will be back at New York on Friday. Game time to be determined. And then if they win Game 6 at Madison Square Garden, which the Cavs have not done this season, 0-4, I believe, they would come back Game 7 on Friday in Cleveland. Game time to be determined. Hopefully we are wrong, Sam. I don't have faith with them. But hey, if they lose Game 5, what a great year it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have faith either, but you would hope that there's a Game 7, if for nothing else, that you and I could have another night hanging out at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse this year, and you yelling at me for putting Splenda in my coffee.
Yes, I did,
and which I did this morning, by the way. I'll have you know.
Well, I will yell at you again Wednesday night when we tap into the coffee at halftime.
I can't wait.
I need you to either go straight sugar or no sugar.
Well, not going to happen.
Not going to happen. All right. Well, that'll do it on this post Game 3 and 4 sweep in Madison Square Garden between the Knicks and the Cavs podcast here on Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast. For Sam Amico, I'm John Sabol. Remember, follow Sam at Amico Hoops on Twitter. Follow his and read his NBA writings, playoff preview, playoff recaps, everything Cavs at hoopswire.com. Follow yours truly at John_Sabol. Sam, I'll see you Wednesday night, man.
All right, sounds good. See you then, and hopefully they'll continue on after that, but who knows?
Thanks for listening, everyone, right here on Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, all part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.